Well, hello people, and welcome back to episode 4 of Project Skylines. I hope you're having a wonderful day. We are recreating Knox Country from the game Project Zomboid in Cities 2. And last episode we added the ceaseless Doe Valley and Fallas Lake to join Rosewood and March Ridge on the current map. Then in episode 4 we're heading to one of my favourite base locations, the wider Riverside district. Not only working on the town today, but the golf course, the warehouses, several farmsteads, and private gated communities that lie in this part of Knox Country. As always, let me know where you base up in Riverside, or let's tackle one of my favourite towns on the entire map, shall we? So we're going to start by opening up quite a massive tile space today. And Riverside has proven to be quite a challenging build, especially the golf course and country club that lies just to the south of the town. But as always, we'll get started with our road frames in a big, classic Project Skylines road time-lapse. And we'll also connect in the highway road that connects from Fallas Lake up to Riverside so the rest of the population can reach the town. There's also another little orbital town here. I don't know if you can quite call it a town, but there's factories, warehouses, gas stations, shops, and a trailer park to the west of Riverside. We're going to start Riverside by working on the main town centre, which is a whole amalgamation of pedestrian roads, commercial, car parking. There's a school around here as well, plus lots of little details. Me personally, if I base up in Rosewood, I usually hang out at the police station or the farmstead, which we'll get to a little bit later on in the episode. Mixes of southwest, northeast and Japanese all make up the commercial on the main street, and Riverside has been a real fun lesson in car parking configurations. There's lots of different patterns all around the backs of these shops, which came out pretty nicely I thought by the end. And then throwing in the laundromat behind the main street and bringing power from Fallas Lake up to the new town. There's also a little gazebo right in the middle of the pathway here, which is a really nice way to use gazebos in CS2 actually, as a bit of a focal point on the intersection of a pedestrian road. Also adding in the bar and the motel, which thankfully CS2 has no shortage of motel assets, and then some further behind building car parking coming in, where we can see on the overlay. There's also tons of little path detailing around Riverside from the main street down to the suburban area, and also behind the video store too, which turns out quite authentically actually. We threw in the lobster tail, and I did try out one of the nightclubs to represent the building here, but it was a bit too extravagant and ended up settling on what else but the Riverside Grill, which made me very happy stumbling upon this. And then adding some further car parking spaces behind this with some tree work around it to help it settle in. In some finer detail now with flower beds, trees, planters and benches all against the waterfront, copying exactly what we see from Knox Country here. And then coming into our residential areas, most of this stuff is pretty universal across the map. Southwest, Northeast and Vanilla American makes the best choice for here. The elementary school present in Riverside, the Vanilla Elementary worked perfectly for it, filled exactly the space we needed to. And then just embellish this with further fence and car parking detailing to bring it to life. Turning our attention to the post office, I was going to do a bit of a custom configuration here, but the Japanese post office fitted perfectly. So we're straying slightly from the exact alleyway configuration here. But the parking and the surfaces are all still present, with the post office also actually making a really good base location for Riverside. Now get into some of the cul-de-sacs, which Riverside has a few. Adding in the police station itself alongside the construction site, kind of trodden ground if you like, that lies between the post office and the police station. After this, we'll start working on some more commercial configurations. This is where you'll find, I think there's a video store here in Riverside, some fun car parking configurations, and because we're using parking roads, we will use static ploppables to form these buildings up. Where we find the spiffos, I think there's also a grocery store here and the gas station in Riverside. This bit right here was definitely the hardest bit of the Riverside town centre, but I think it actually ends up turning out pretty nicely. A lot of the southwest commercial serves this purpose quite nicely, with the playground and fence work also going in behind this building as well. Spiffos and the gas station also go in. The gas station configuration is almost exactly what it is in Zomboid actually. And then use the static ploppable to replicate the car wash that sits alongside this particular gas station. With the grocery store going in with some better bulldozer work around it and the final fence work to really bring this little commercial plaza together. Turning our attention back to that cul-de-sac now, positioning lots of southwest residential with the fencing that we can see on the map. This definitely turns out to be one of the most authentic bits. The main road through Riverside randomly named itself Rosewood Street, which I thought was very funny. I wonder what the chances of that were. But these cul-de-sacs are definitely the best bit of Riverside, super distinctive feature, and thanks to cul-de-sacs being added to the game now, and no problem at all to develop in Cities 2. Returning to the supplementary buildings around the church, I, funnily enough, decided to go for a pub because it kind of had that older style building to it which I wanted. And now we come to the gated community, another super popular base location. Loads of basement loot in these houses, by the way, if you haven't been here in Build 42. But the UK residential works pretty much perfectly for these areas because they come already fenced in with their own detailed gardens and fit pretty much exactly the space you can tell on the overlay. So for pretty much any gated community we come across in Knox Country, we're always likely to use these UK assets. Bringing the fence to make the community gated, and some finer path details that are also present in this little residential area. There's also a park in the gated community as well, which is just simple pathwork and a gazebo, which is another testament to how, I think, simple you can keep CS2's detailing, but almost keep it quite effective as well. It's turning out to be such a unique project. and each episode is definitely getting harder, but I'm always still so satisfied with what we're left with, taking inspiration from Knox Country. And then the last of the fence work just to demarcate each property boundary. And the east side approach into Riverside is looking pretty authentic now. Super happy with this little view. Before more endless, ceaseless residential plop in. Now we turn our attention to the western edge of Riverside, where there's a bar, I think another grocery store and a laundromat here. Bit of a random collection of commercial, but always more fun car parking configurations to be had. It's also here where we'll find the burger shop, the fishing tackle and the junkyard, which is a great bit of detailing translated very well. Indeed, into CS2, because we're using parking roads here in this little bit, all of these are static bloppables, so non-functioning commercial for those not familiar with CS2. Also throwing in some sand and picnic bench props, which we find exactly outside of the burger shop in Riverside. Also linking the pathway that runs along the waterfront down to the town, and adding in some smaller, more trailer park style homes here on these dirt roads. The sand texture goes in for the junkyard, classic chain link fence, and thankfully in CS2's vanilla pool there are already scrap cars, so this was tailor made. Use the Japanese shed to indicate the little trailer that's here with the portaloo, and then lots of scrap cars. Easily, probably the most best bit of Riverside here, and an absolute fat amount of Mechanics XP for those on Zomboid. And if you have made it to this point in the video, don't forget to leave me that zombie emoji down in the comments below. Welcome back to Project Surface, everyone, as we resume the endless surface work of Knox Country, with well-trodden pathways and fields that lie on the edge of Riverside. We now come onto the farmstead, which is a super underrated base location, lots of loot locations near here. And this was actually the location of my longest ever survived character, Christina Verstappen, who survived for 6 months without dying before eventually succumbing by a stupid death in the industrial areas of Louisville. A lot of the farm sub-buildings work really nicely for these little farm sub-buildings, chicken coops, cattle sheds, barns, etc. All the usual farm infrastructure you'd expect to find out here. Now we address this little town. Again, this doesn't have a name, but there is some functioning industry here. We use better bulldozer to tidy up some of the smokestacks and just position it to create rough with the shape we see just outside of Riverside, extending surfaces and dropping in car parking where we expect to find it. I did mention last episode I'm going to try keep a functioning simulation, but there's so little industry in Knox Country that I don't think we'll be able to do it, but I'm placing it here where we can get it. Another gas station configuration goes in. European ones always work well, with a little burger restaurant next door that sits just in front of the trailer park. Whilst also bringing the power up from Riverside. There's also a self-storage unit here, which was great fun to build, some static ploppable warehouses, with some functioning industry and car parking with fencing to help create this little spot. There's tons of self-storage units in Knox Country, so it'll be fun to create them in all different shapes and sizes as we stumble across them in this project. We now go to the trailer park, which is just a lot of 2x2 European low-density residential. Is the most trailer-looking asset I can find in the CS2 vanilla pool, so We're likely to run with these every time we come across a trailer park configuration on the map. With that little outer line industrial area done, we now turn our attention to the east of Riverside, where there's more endless, never-ending field work to do. Of course, what else in this project? It's not as bad as the Doe Valley was, and certainly will not be as bad as the area north of Irvington, but simple farmsteads and field textures, definitely nothing we haven't already seen before in Project Skylines. And for the Zomboid players, let me know, do you guys ever come and visit these super rural little farmsteads? And with that in, the eastern edge of Riverside is now starting to look pretty authentic. Now comes the hardest bit of the build, the countryside golf club and country club. There's also a bit of an equestrian horse riding stables here. Super challenging bit of the build, but we'll start with the road frames, of course, as always. There's a lot of different things present here, including housing, swimming pools, lots of little well-trodden pebble pathways linking people back to the car parks here. A ton of surface work, lots of different concrete and sand textures all crossing over one another, which was actually quite challenging to work with to make this look quite real and not a bit janky. But I do walk away from it quite inspired for creating almost kind of horse riding stables or equestrian yards. Really quite unique build that I probably wouldn't have attempted without looking at the Knox Country map. Tons of fence work around here, with plenty of prop work to go in as well. Went with some static chicken coops as the riding stables, as I couldn't find another appropriate asset, with more fence work around the different horse yards. And surprisingly enough, the dog park props actually worked really nicely for detailing these little horse spaces. So it's certainly something that's doable with the current asset pool. Hopefully you guys can tell what this is. I thought it came out pretty nicely. Adding in a static ploppable motel as the head building. And then there's even some sports stands here, which again, CS2 already has in its asset pool, so no problem at all. Imagine just space to watch horses trot around in circles and jump over pieces of wood. Now on to the country club, which was definitely the hardest bit. Tons of different tile surface work here, planters, little sub-buildings, a pool, and all the things that come with a pool, like the tool sheds and, you know, I guess where they store chlorine or pool cleaning equipment, etc., whatever it is, toilets possibly. Tons of fountain, light props, and bench detailing scattered all in the grounds of this country house. I'm using one of the motels as a static ploppable to fuse this together into a much more convincing country house aesthetic, and then bring in all the hedges and fencing around the perimeter of the building. There's also a small car park here as well, for which the car parking roads and a bit of fence work did the job perfectly. With the main car park also going in at the entrance. There's also a tennis court present here, for which I placed the ploppable tennis park so people would come and visit it. And the golf course is just a lot of dirt road and texture work. Actually, probably a little bit easier than I anticipated it to be coming into this. Simple textures. There's also like a cafe and a bit of sort of like an equipment room out here in the golf course as well, kind of separate from the country club. So we also incorporate those. But lots of riverbed thin and vanilla sand texture. Do quite a convincing job of just giving you the visual of a golf course. The greens, along with the rough and sand traps all across the course, came out pretty convincingly. Here is one of those little in-site golf course locations, replicating the prop work exactly here, before placing in some larger UK homes to indicate. I'm not sure if these are kind of like rentals for golfers or if they're actual homes on the course. Not entirely sure what the situation is in Zomboid. Let me know if you know. I imagine they're more kind of holiday rental homes for rich golfers. One of those little sites going in now present on the golf course looks more like sort of an equipment shed or maintenance grounds really, and placed in some fencing with the exact dumpster props we see in Knox Country. Same thing again with the cafe that lies by one of the water traps. It's a custom surface work here to replicate what we see in the map, which is always a fun lesson in how you can use surfaces maybe a little more creatively in CS2. And then also added in a security booth in the middle of the road at the entrance, before rounding out the final bit of Riverside, the very western farmsteads that lead us up to our current tile boundary. Which leaves us with something that looks a little bit like this. By far and away the most challenging episode yet, with some really unique builds in here, especially the whole country club. That was such a challenge. But I hope you have enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave me likes, comments and shares below if you have. These videos take an awful long time to produce and build, so I hope you are enjoying the series. Thank you for all the support on it. An enormous shout out to the YouTube members and patrons that support these videos, with a roll call to our golden patron eggs, Bad Wolf, Blythe, Casino, Great Z, Jamin, Louis Adlam, Michael W, Phoenix MD, and Spartan Angel. If you want to get involved in that, links down below to Patreon and Instant Gaming are the best ways to do so. And I think next episode we will be heading to what is going to be a very challenging town in the form of Brandenburg. See you for that. Enjoy the cinematics, and I'll shut up and leave it there. And I thank you all so much for watching. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day.